hook. Can you explain that to people? Because I don't think people understand that. I don't think I fully understand it. How do you develop a hook? What is a hook?
Yeah.
Artists create, great artists steal.
Sure.
So for the guy who doesn't know what the hell he's doing on social media.
A lot of young kids doing like dancing videos when it first came
In the
out. But
beginning.
like now, I think it's a little bit more of an even split now. I think there's still probably more of an older generation on Instagram because that's what we grew up with and that's what we kind of know. And TikTok's newer.
Welcome back to the J&B BodyWorks podcast, also known as J&B Body Talks. I'm Who Is Mikey Is, or Mikey Izzo, and we are a conversation show where we talk to guests from all walks of life, A to Z, about cars, entertainment, starting business, social media, all that stuff. And I'm really excited to have today's guest on. He is somebody who works in the media space through a ton of different companies, currently working with the Vayner Group. He is a local Westchester guy. I hope I didn't just dox you there. Seth Feingersh.
Nailed
here.
it. You nailed it.
Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, man. I'm pumped to be here.
So we found each other through kind of an interesting story. Nick Dio, who was a former guest of the podcast, somebody who also works in that Vayner stratosphere ecosystem. And then you connected. You were fortunately a fan of the shop before that.
Yes.
So you found us through social media?
I did, yes. I saw you guys either on Reels or TikTok and just couldn't believe that you guys were local to New York and you were doing social right.
So you're a car guy?
Oh, very much so.
What do you drive?
Right now, I've got a 1988 944S.
Oh,
Porsche.
beautiful car. One of the most underappreciated Porsches on the market.
I couldn't agree more.
Fantastic car. So why don't we start off, tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, what your job is.
So I'm Seth. I'm a content producer. I'm a car guy at heart. And I try to find ways to kind of combine those. But what I do for my day job, it's a little bit scattered. My official title is Director of Special Projects, which is the easiest way to say I do a lot of different things depending on the project. But it all, for the most part, roots itself in social media. So, a couple weeks ago, I was on a shoot for a client, which was a bigger budget shoot that will live on TikTok. This weekend coming up, I'll be in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. Shooting for the company to help bring awareness to our sponsors, create little social clips for our sponsors, and then that'll live kind of anywhere on social that they have agreed to.
So what does your day-to-day look like?
It's never the same. It's very rarely the same, but it's a lot of shooting and editing. It's a little bit of planning. It's everything kind of around the creation of social media content.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you work, we were talking about that Vayner ecosystem.
Yes. So currently I work at a division of VaynerX called Gary Media Group.
Okay.
I've been there for about 7 years. I've seen a lot of different things. I've been in a lot of different teams. I originally started on Gary Vee, for anybody who hasn't heard, on his personal brand team running his podcast.
Okay.
So I'm traditionally, I went to school for audio engineering, went to school for to like produce music. Never really caught on. I kind of got bored. Love like being in a dark studio all day and like wanted to be around people and doing stuff. I worked really random odd jobs out of college. I like bartended. I worked at a Red Mango or Starbucks. Like I did all these little odd jobs until I finally fell into something that I really enjoyed, which turned out to be social media. I got a chance to run this 3D printing company's social media, even though I had zero experience in running social media for a brand or a company.
Okay.
But I knew the space because I worked at another 3D print, not a competitor, but like a similar company before. They gave me the shot and was there for about a year and a half, kind of gained my video editing chops, gained my social media chops, and then got the opportunity through my girlfriend at the time, now wife. She started at VaynerX Media in the traditional ad agency side before I did. Met a couple people. And then overheard the team Gary was looking for an audio engineer, and that's when I was able to make that hop over.
And that was 7 years ago.
It'll be 7 years in April.
So the page that you started on, that kind of where you cut your teeth, did you help grow that page?
I did, yeah. There was definitely a lot of growth to it. I definitely didn't know what the fuck I was doing at first. It was a lot of trial and error, which is kind of what I learned most of social media ends up being.
They're just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. I granted, I wasn't hired into VaynerX because of my acumen in social media. I was hired more because I knew audio, and it was a big plus that I also had experience running a page.
Okay.
I didn't end up running another page probably until like a year or two later after I had joined. But it was all related to the same, like I was there. I was inherently there to help grow Gary's following.
And what did you learn from growing that page? Because we are a service-based company and we're trying to grow our page. And that it sounds like a service or product-based. So did you learn anything that helped you in your career now?
Everything's always changing. You got to stay up to date with what's with the newest features, the newest platforms, the newest products. Like that's when Facebook Live just launched.
Oh, wow.
Like way back before Instagram Live, before TikTok was a thing. I remember like we went live from the office. We had like a drone that we had 3D printed.
That's pretty sick.
Shoot, it was awesome. It was rad. We're flying in the office on Park Avenue is also kind of terrifying because you're like, so papers flying everywhere. But we ended up with like, I think it was like 3,000 to 5,000 viewers because there just weren't a lot of people that were taking advantage of it at the time. And we ended up doing a couple little like live shows here and there because we saw this, this massive, unprecedented amount of viewership. And it drove a little bit to our page. I think like there was a lot more that could have been done. There was some pushback around like the way that we were doing social media within the company. But it was then that I kind of realized like you got to take advantage of what's in front of you.
Can you go in a little bit more in depth about that? Because that's interesting. What was the pushback and what do you think you could have changed now knowing what you know to back then?
Totally, yeah. They didn't really see the value in social media as thoroughly as they should have. There was also a lot of issues with like IP infringement, and that's sort of the line that we towed of like the company was a service, basically a 3D printing service, and they also had a marketplace where like their users would create X, Y, and Z. They would create a design for a cup holder for a 9/11, let's say, and they would post it online. People could purchase that, so they would get a cut of it. The company would get a cut of it because the company's the one producing it. But then people also would make copies, and that's honestly always the stuff that did best.
Right.
Like we tried out once posting some political stuff. It was kind of around that election year. You could print full color 3D printings, like really crazy stuff. And we were like, all right, let's like we saw some traffic to this thing on the site. Let's try posting and see what happens. Blew up, did awesome, went viral. CEO was pissed.
Really?
CEO is not happy about it because he's like, oh, it was a foreign company, and they didn't quite have the same views as we did, like in terms of humor. So we took it down, but like it just like that job definitely taught me to stay relevant with trends and to take advantage of every platform nuance that you possibly can.
Okay. So let's say you're with that company and something that I've seen a lot people are jumping towards is this Threads thing on Instagram.
Sure.
So something like that comes out. You think it's important for a business, any business that's trying to take social media seriously, to jump headfirst into doing whatever is the newest and hottest thing?
Definitely. I think definitely at first. As soon as it comes out, you should be on it and at least playing with it and testing it to see what's different from its competitors.
Okay.
So like Threads is obviously very similar to Twitter.
Right.
They're almost the same product. They're just called different things. They have slightly different functionalities, and Twitter still has the historic market share.
Right.
But if you got on Threads early on and you were posting nearly the same stuff that you're posting on Twitter, or like honestly the same stuff you're posting on any other platform that's not vertical video, because there was just so much less noise, there was a big opportunity to just gain some traction there. And then you can always redirect out into other platforms.
So like that initial hype around it, like, oh, they're doing it, let's see what they're doing.
And like right now, it's still going. It's still around. People are still using it. I think it's died down a little bit from what it was.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's still value to having a presence there.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're producing content specifically for it.
Sometimes I get scared for us about jumping into something that we're not that familiar with and maybe looking stupid or failing. Do you think there's merit at all? Do you think there's anything important about that, even if you're not like a professional? Like for Threads, I don't even know where we would start. You think it makes sense to jump in and try?
Do you guys post on Twitter?
No.
Got it. Okay. So that's probably why it scares you a little bit, because you're not on that other platform that's a similar mechanism. I mean, I think it's definitely worth it. I think there's a lot of knowledge that you guys probably have specifically that would interest people. Like I follow, I think he's car dealership guy. And he just posts stats about the car dealership world, like interesting stats around trends and just like the way that people are buying, the way that people are selling, the way that dealerships are selling, the way that dealerships are buying from their allocations. And it's like, it's kind of niche, but it's also like he gets a huge amount of engagement from people that are looking to buy, people that are just interested in the industry, people that work in the industry. and it's like fascinating. So there's always going to be a niche for something.
Right. There's going to be engagement from somebody at some point.
Yeah. Like you can post trends around what you're seeing and what you're hearing in the space, or you can. I would imagine that there are a lot of niche stats and just information and ways to engage that would be really beneficial to you guys.
That's interesting to me because I feel like one of the things that I've been putting a lot of effort into, we were talking about before, little shameless plug, J&B Body Works is going to be hosting our first Cars and Coffee event at the end of March. And so I've been thinking a lot about community-based. And I feel as though that sort of aspect of it, same with Facebook Live, Instagram Live, that stuff, there's a weird aspect of more of a face-on engagement rather than just behind a screen. How important do you think community-based stuff is for a growing social media company and or company that just uses social media as marketing?
Very. I mean, you want your followers to know who you are and love you as a whole. There's also like the angle that you're probably talking to a different audience than you on Instagram, than you are on TikTok, than you are on Twitter, than you are on Facebook. Like it's all different audiences.
You think they're different?
Oh, definitely.
Do you have like any sort of difference that you can point out between, let's say, like what's the audience like on TikTok versus Instagram, for example?
The common answer to that is like it's definitely a younger audience in TikTok than it is on Instagram. I don't necessarily think that's super, super true. I think that was like you saw a lot of young kids doing like dancing videos when it first came out, but like now I think it's a little bit more of an even split now. I think there's still probably more of an older generation on Instagram because that's what we grew up with and that's what we kind of know. And TikTok's newer, but like I can't lie when my screen time definitely says I've been spending more time on TikTok than I have on Instagram. Like
might be embarrassing, but it's true.
Oh, totally, yeah. But like, and there's unlimited content and information there to the niches that I enjoy. Like my TikTok is all airplanes and cars.
That's cool.
It's all it is. Is like those are my two interests.
Right. So like for us or a small creator, how can we figure out what's going to work for us on social media, where we should be, how engaged we should be with one thing or the other?
Yeah, just by posting different types of content over and over and over until you see what works. And I think you guys have done a pretty good job of that so far.
Thank you.
I think you've seen a lot of things hit very hard, and I think you can definitely draw a line between what the common thread is there. But that's really all it is just more content all the time everywhere. Do
you think collaborating between different social media platforms, between a body shop and like a tint shop, you think stuff like that's important?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
it helps you guys. I mean, it helps you guys business wise. I'm sure. Like you guys then are able to share customers. You're able to refer. I don't think there's any downside to it. I think it's like as long as you still have your own voice in there, and your own IP in there, then you're good.
Then it should be there.
Yeah,
yeah. And one of the things that we're pushing towards is what we're doing right now is podcasting. I think people think it's interesting or maybe weird or quirky that a body shop has a podcast. So I guess kind of one of the questions that I'm kind of circling around is, do you think it's important with social media to stick to one specific lane, or is it okay to experiment and try different things within the space?
Definitely experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the fact that you guys have a podcast is fantastic. Like from one show, you get like 6 or 7 different clips that you then can put out in the world, and somebody's going to watch that and enjoy that over the normal like in-shop stuff you do because maybe they recognize that the guest that's on the show or the guest in the show was a really big name. They shared out the piece of content, and then that also got their audience interested, and they said, okay, like, oh shit, like we also love cars. We have a common interest now. We're going to follow these guys, or we're going to, oh wow, they're local. We're going to take our car to these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And you helped run a podcast for Gary?
Yeah. So I helped run his for 2 years. I posted every single day.
Wow.
And the way that his podcast runs, or at least it did when I was running it, was it's not all native content. A lot of it is recycled content, and a lot of it is stuff that like is a keynote or a business meeting or a talk or a kind of a mashup of something. It's not all native content because he just doesn't have the time to be able to do that.
Right.
But that's what my job was to figure out what's interesting content, what's interesting audio content. This is before we had video and Spotify or anything like that.
Right.
Should we be posting 4-minute episodes? Should we be posting 4-hour episodes? Like, what's doing better? Figure out the analytics. Figure out what that common thread is that people are enjoying.
And what do you look for in a piece of content for it to hit your checklist, your mental checklist, or if you have a written down one? Is there stuff that maybe you can look at immediately and say that won't work or that will work?
Number one, more recently, I would say, because content has trends just like everything does.
Right, like you said, things change.
Correct. A hook.
Okay.
Like that initial hook of like, am I interested in this, or am I just going to keep scrolling?
So how important, I've been hearing that all the time. I see people send me Instagram videos. I get on my feed, hook, hook, hook. Can you explain that to people? Because I don't think people understand that. I don't think I fully understand it. How do you develop a hook? What is a hook?
Yeah. How interesting can you make a piece of content in the first 1 second of somebody watching it, so that while they're literally doing this at this speed on their phone, they stop when they see yours?
Okay.
So it's that first second of content.
So that's the most important thing.
Correct.
Okay. Is that just verbal?
It can be visual, it can be verbal, it can be a combination of the two. It needs to stand out in a way. Think of like a YouTube thumbnail.
Okay.
It's very similar. Like you're scrolling YouTube, you're scrolling,
There's 1,000 videos.
Exactly. Like what's going to catch your eye? You're more likely to click on what's catching your eye than something that's kind of bland and uninteresting.
So you'll look at a piece of content and you'll say, okay, Gary's got this podcast where it's kind of a culmination of different stuff that he's done, right? So in a 2-hour meeting, if somebody's taking a video, you'll say to yourself, at minute 5 of this clip, he said something that maybe he posed a question.
Sure.
And that question was interesting to you and the way that you've been thinking about stuff.
Yep.
And you'll say, maybe that's interesting to the viewer.
Yes.
And then you'll clip that. Okay.
I'd say yes, and when you do it for a while and you work on, like, if you work on one brand for a while, you kind of start to understand what the audience wants to see. So it might not necessarily be something that I'm interested in, but if I know that like there's a topic that comes up that hits really hard, even if it doesn't interest me, I'm going to still try that one out because I know that the audience has responded to that in the past. So like, these out of all the pillars of content that he has around, empathy or patience,
business,
et cetera, like you kind of learn what those pillars are and what people respond to.
A good lesson for the viewers is don't just think about what's going to be interesting to you personally, Michael Izzo. Look at what people in your niche are interested in. Exactly. Are there any other tools that you use? Like I've been hearing this thing, SEO, a lot.
Yeah.
Is there any other tools that you're using that can help a business figure out what people are asking?
What we used to do more manually for YouTube specifically. So we have an hour-long show, main pillar show. It's called Ask Gary Vee. It's where it's a call-in show. People call in, he answers questions. Or sometimes the later on iteration was doing that, but also with the guest. So it's like he would interview Hasan Minhaj, and then they do their interview for like 20 minutes, and then for the last 30 minutes they would take callers that we his team, as this live show is happening, would kind of pre-select message them, be
super
like,
interesting.
What's your phone number? We'll call them in. We'll do all that.
Wow.
What we would start doing, we had a whole separate YouTube channel that we would cut each one of those questions because it was super easy to say, like, the question would be like, should I go to college?
Okay.
Right? And we would clip that 5-minute section, type into YouTube, like, a bunch of different combinations of should I go to college, and be like, why should I go to college? How should I go to college today? Whatever. Should I go to college in the future? And whatever we could get to pop up with the sentence that we had in our mind,
like what people searched for.
Yeah, that's where we would go. Okay, that's probably the right thing. And it might not work anymore. I'll give you that caveat.
I think what I've been seeing lately is when I type in something like, what year did Porsche, start its brand?
Sure.
Underneath the first 3 sponsored and then first 3 really well SEO'd options, there'll be a down arrow with a question. And if you click on one of those, it'll bring up like 3 more questions.
Yep.
So I think that's something that I was wondering that might work. And I think that's actually a great idea for people.
This like we were doing under the context of YouTube specifically, but YouTube and Google do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They probably use the same system in the back.
For sure. And one thing that has been poking out to me since we've been talking that I want to ask you about is the reuse of content. So it seems like we've been afraid to reuse content, but it seems like you're saying specifically for long format stuff, it's okay to chop that stuff up and reuse it multiple times. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think there's a limit, I would say, to like the amount that you should be posting in a day specifically on YouTube. That limit has gotten a little fuzzy now with the introduction of shorts, but like you should definitely be taking long form, distilling it to medium form, distilling it to short form.
Interesting.
Like having those kind of 3 formats to play with.
Wring out every single drop of content.
Oh, totally. Like you're spending an hour of your time doing this right now. Right. Like that's important. That's that's your time. You should definitely be getting as much out of that as you possibly can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think one thing that pops into my head when you say that is probably the most popular podcast in the world is the JRE podcast. And I remember one thing that before I would tune in weekly to his long form podcast was they would clip up 2 or 3 minute questions, and that would immediately get me interested in, okay, I was really interested in that. I want to hear what this guy has to say for 3 hours. So I think that's actually a really good idea for people. And I think one thing that I'm picking up from what you're saying is the attention span, people are often saying, of the general population seems to be going down. Totally. But it almost seems though like there is a yearning or a need for long form content. Do you see that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still watch 20-minute YouTube videos.
Okay.
Like I still watch interviews. I still listen to podcasts. Like I don't think it'll ever go away. I think the way in which you discover it is what's kind of changing.
And how important is storytelling to you when you're creating content or curating content?
Oh, very.
Yeah.
I would say it's dependent on what you're doing, right? Like it's important in what you're doing. If you're doing more informational stuff, maybe it's a little bit less. It's all about the content and the way that you're formatting it. I always get tripped up in the storytelling part because it's like I just think of it in different ways.
Yeah, but I think that's probably crucial because if you're thinking about it in a different way, then somebody may have not thought about it.
Very true.
Or have thought about it like that, but nobody else has been talking about it.
Totally fair.
So I think that's huge. One thing that we've noticed is our content needs to have 3 things to perform well. And I think the first thing, like you said, is a hook. And we're still working on figuring out what hooks work for us. And there are so many tools out there. There are so many people, like I said, posting and sending us stuff about hooks. I think going along with the reusing content, I think you can reuse hooks a lot too.
Totally.
If you find a hook that works for you, Porsche did this crazy thing that changed the car world, and here's why. If that works for the Porsche thing, it's probably going to work for the Lambo thing. It's probably going to work for the Bentley thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is storytelling.
Totally.
People really, you can build a story around anything.
Totally.
Like when we got these mics, first we bought these really shitty mics, and they made our podcast sound terrible. So we did research, and we found out these mics worked for us. Blah 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 blah. And that can be a story, and somebody might be interested in that.
Yeah, and then you can form little mini series off that too. Like if you're going of the history of each car manufacturer, you can have them be very similar, but it's obviously about a different topic.
Right.
But it's the same theme, the same idea.
Are you a fan of the Donut Media guys? Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Another shameless plug. One thing that they did that I think built them a lot of success when they first were getting big was they had those in-depth discussions about stuff that everybody wanted to know about. Yes. So like it was the Supra.
Yep.
We've all seen them up to speed.
Up to
exactly.
Speed.
I was embarrassingly forgetting what it was. They did an up to speed about everything.
Yeah.
It was the same concept 1,000 times over, rinse and repeat about different things that were interesting, and it worked. And
relatively easy to produce.
And I think that's
the barrier. That's also really important. Is like I love super high quality video as much as the next person, but that was just James on a green screen. Right.
And well, that's the thing too. And that's what TikTok is showing us is a guy with an iPhone with no microphone, no floodlight, no anything.
Yeah.
Well, I can binge the guy. We were talking about this before the podcast started with my brother. He was watching a guy cleaning washer machines for hours the other night.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
And to tie into that, just what you are doing might not seem interesting to you, but just start posting.
Yes.
Because I guarantee you something is interesting about that. I will find it interesting. You will find it interesting.
Yes.
Somebody will. And that's going to drive engagement that you can't even believe.
100%.
So it's really important. And the other thing is, I think it's another good lesson that we're talking about here is you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Right.
If you are making something, just be consistent about it and post it.
Totally.
We were getting no traction on YouTube about a month ago.
Really?
And we were like, maybe we're just not meant for YouTube.
For shorts or for
everything.
Sure.
It's the long form stuff is harder for us.
It will be.
The short form stuff was getting 1,000 views, which some people will say,
better than
1,000 views is exactly. It's not nothing.
Yeah.
But then once we started being consistent, it started to grow, and now we're hoping in the next 2 weeks we're gonna hit 10K subscribers, which for us is great. We're really excited about that.
That was fast.
Yeah. So when Elvis, our content creator, started here, I think we were at somewhere around 150 followers or subscribers, and now we're at almost 10,000. So
that's fast, man.
You don't know.
You start to see that hockey stick growth. I mean, once you're consistent, you start to see that hockey stick growth.
Right, and it's not going. Listen, we have a leg up, and I think that's the fact that we are in a luxury business that not many people have access to. But again, I've seen pages with much bigger followings with a guy who cleans washing machines.
Yeah.
So I think it's huge.
And on the inverse too, like make sure you're giving yourself credit for what you guys are doing.
No,
like,
I appreciate
there are also
that.
there are plenty of people that have the access and still don't do it the right way.
Right.
Or they're just not interesting.
So
or they haven't found that niche.
If you, to put you on the spot, if you had to, there's a guy down the street who is the elevator guy. He fixes elevators. What's your recommendation for that guy to start creating content? Is there like a simple formula, or is there something that you would recommend?
Oh man, like just film whatever you can.
Yeah.
You have the camera on the iPhone is wild. It's so there's like the fact that I can shoot better video on my iPhone than I could the camera that I had 7 years ago.
Yep.
Blows my mind.
Right.
So like while you're on a service call, like film what you're doing, narrate it later. Like I've watched elevator videos on TikTok because I'm like, because I have a very like mechanical mind.
Okay.
And I'm like, I have no idea how elevators fucking work. Like I'm fascinated. Like,
But I go in them every day.
Go in this every day. Like this is how it works. Like this is how the switchboard works. Like this is how like all the the relays that are clicking. Like it will be fascinating to somebody to just shoot it and try it. And like it might suck at first. Like I am not good in front of a camera usually. Very, very. I very much don't like being on camera as much.
You're a very handsome guy.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Wife's a very lucky woman.
I appreciate that. But like, and I've done it a little bit more, and I know it gets easier and easier.
Right.
It's just all practice.
Yeah.
As with anything.
The videos that we first shot here, you look at me on camera and you look at me on camera now, and I just like. At first I didn't understand why I was getting so much hate on the internet, and then slowly it started to go away, and I was like, I would have hated that guy.
Comments. This comment section is brutal.
Yeah,
You just got to tune it out and like just let it roll.
I have grown thicker skin. I am cool with it.
It's good.
The person who I need to constantly talk off a ledge is my wife, because she gets pissed.
Does she read the comments?
Oh my God. I had to tell her, you have to stop.
Oh, man.
Because I come home and she's like, who is this guy? I'd be like, honestly, babe, like he's an not uneducated like high school, but he doesn't.
Keyboard warrior.
Right. He doesn't know what he's talking about
Correct.
on this specific thing. He's commenting. The best thing to do and the best advice we've gotten through this podcast is kill people with kindness.
100%.
Thank you for your comment. Here's my response to your thing. Thank you for the engagement. Please keep going. It shuts
them up, or you get a reply saying like, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were a real person."
Yeah,
something like that.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, and I mean I've seen that. That I've seen a lot in Gary's content. He, depending on what you think of him, he can come off a couple different ways. It is all in very good intent, but. I mean, I think that strategy exactly is what I've heard and learned from him a lot. Is like just kill him with kindness. So
it's the best thing to do.
That person is having a worse day than you are.
Yeah.
And like they just need to get some shit off their chest sometimes. And like it's not actually an aggressive. It's not
they like you said, they probably don't think you're a real person or whatever. And I want to ask a few questions about Gary and your relationship with him, and see if you have any stories. But one of the things I want to ask before that is, are you familiar with this saying, "Steal like an artist"?
Yeah.
So, specifically through the lens of somebody who's starting off in social media, how do you feel about telling somebody steal like an artist?
To remind me what the saying means.
Sure,
again
yeah,
now,
of course.
I'm thinking, I'm like, do I actually know what it means?
So the concept, that the way that we understand it is, they say something like, good artists create, great artists steal.
Sure.
So for the guy who doesn't know what the hell he's doing on social media, for example,
emulate.
Yes.
Totally. Yeah.
You think that's okay?
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
I think you can do that. You can do that to get comfortable with it, and then no matter what, you're gonna have some sort of version of yourself in there. Like I will never be able to do the exact same thing that you're doing. The way that I speak will be different. The way that I kind of present will be different. You're gonna get some of yourself in there no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what it takes to get you to start, then like fuck it, go for it. Why not?
There's so many people doing the exact same thing, and it all performs well.
Totally.
It's not like
there's how many car reviewers on YouTube and on TikTok, and some of them are similar.
Right.
But also some people have their own niche. Like nobody's going to be able to do that. Nobody's going to be able to do the same review as Doug DeMuro.
Right.
Like he has a very unique way of doing it, and people try.
Yeah. They do.
Like people definitely try, and you watch it and you say, okay, this is somebody, like they're trying. It's awesome. They should be trying, but it's not the same. Like you're not getting that same authenticity. So like yes and no, I would say. Like making sure that you're doing it the way that you're the most comfortable is probably the most important. If it takes trying to copy somebody else's style at first to get you going, then like do what you got to do.
Right. So maybe emulate, but do it with authenticity.
Yes.
So the Doug DeMuro thing is huge. I watched a guy, I think his name is at Metal Jesus online. He's a video game guy, and he's a older tech video game guy. And I remember watching a video that he did after I became a fan of Doug DeMuro, where he basically reviewed the quirks and features, which he should have.
Sure.
Doug DeMuro should have trademarked, because that really is his thing.
Yeah. About
this old weird laptop. And I was at the end of it, I was typing before the video ended, you should look up Doug DeMuro, and as I was saying that or typing that, he said, I just want to make a shout out to Doug DeMuro. I'm a huge fan, and this video was in his vein.
That's awesome.
And I enjoyed it. I didn't see it as him stealing or doing something, he didn't plagiarize, but I thought I could have watched 100 more videos of weird laptops, weird game consoles, weird games in that niche, in that aesthetic or type that he does it in. And I think that's a good lesson for people too. If you
That's awesome.
see something you like, try it. And maybe
it's a great way to put it too, though. Like he's doing the same thing, but it's a completely different topic.
Right.
So it's not exactly emulating. It's his own. He's doing it.
It's
in his
paying
own words.
homage to something.
Correct.
Homage. So, were you a fan of Gary's before you started working with him?
I knew who he was. I wouldn't say I knew who he was. Yeah. I think I more so knew who he was in the context of the ad agency.
Okay.
So for bigger context here, Gary is both a personal brand, but he also runs what is now a 2,000 person global ad agency.
Jeez.
So VaynerX Media is the name of the company. My wife has spent her whole career in advertising. So when I was kind of like confused and I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do with my life, she's like, oh, like look into what I do. Like maybe, so there's some positions that interest you. And she's like, oh, you should take a look at VaynerX Media. It's like a little scrappy. It's like kind of a startup. This guy, Gary Vee, runs it. She's like, I know a couple of people there, like, apply. So I applied, got an interview, didn't get the job, kind of put it out of my mind. And then my wife got the position there. And that's, again, how I jumped back over. But I knew him more as like the ad guy that also answered business questions online.
Right. And went door to door and did the garage sale stuff.
Garage sale, yep. When I joined on, I left what was a full-time job with benefits in this 3D printing company and took a risk. A lot of when you join his team, most of the time you start out kind of as you start out in a trial run. You started as an intern. It was at the time. It's actually very much since changed, but didn't pay as well as what I had originally. Didn't have benefits, so I was like, I'm 26 or I'm 25, whatever I was at the time. This is the only time that I'm going to be able to take this risk. I recognize that this is a huge opportunity. So fuck it, I'll go for it. If it doesn't work out, I'll figure something out. Like I'm young enough. I live in a cheap apartment. I'll figure it out.
Right. And so you work closely with him? Like, do you ever work face to face with him?
I used to. So I've been at the company, at the holding company itself, VaynerX, for 7 years. In that time, I spent my first 2 years in his team directly. So he has a personal brand team of, back then it was probably about 12 people. Now it's probably closer to 30-ish, give or take, that are completely devoted to his brand, his content, and keeping that all running.
Okay.
So when I was on his team, it was working. You're texting everybody in the team, everybody in him. It's to just like figure out content, figure out what's going to go on next, figure out when we're shooting something next. Like it all revolves around his brand.
Is he different in person than he is on social media?
No, he's the same person.
Really?
Yeah. In a very like positive way. Like he is incredibly kind. He is the same person you see in every different context. Like incredibly kind, incredibly focused. It's definitely nerve-wracking having your first one-on-one.
That's gotta be terrifying.
But then you sit down and he's like, "Hey, what's up?
I'm just a guy.
I'm just a dude. Like, tell me what's going on. How you enjoying the team? How you enjoying the company? Is there anything I can help with?" It definitely took me some time to get comfortable in one-on-one situations with him. But that's also like, I really had to frame it in my mind as like he's not. this is also my job. Like, he's also my boss. Got to get comfortable with that.
Right.
Even though he is has
Massive
a big,
superstar.
massive following. Yeah.
Yeah. There's probably an aspect to that that's beneficial. What do you think has allowed him to be so successful? And I mean, he really had, I'm sure not behind the scenes, but to somebody like me, it seemed like he had just a massive explosion in growth. What do you think was the catalyst for that?
Consistent posting online.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he made an investment to have people cut up his content. Like, it's not free. It's not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But he made an investment in himself, and it started, I think when I joined on is around that time where that hockey stick growth started. Like, he's always been trending upward, but that was the first time that it was a pretty significant sized team. And just more content everywhere all the time, all at once. Along with everybody on the team being experts in their field and understanding like the best way to hack social media to make it work for you.
Interesting. So he put the right people in place.
Yeah.
And he was just very consistent.
Yep.
And over time, it found its corner and exploded.
Totally. And it goes back to the same, like, what was a very popular phrase of his was document, don't create. So it's like he had somebody following him 24/7 with the camera, not 24/7, but a lot of time with the camera. That would then get distilled down to the rest of the team. Team would cut it up, use it in their respective areas. One person was in charge of Instagram, one person was in charge of Facebook, one person Twitter, so on and so forth, podcast, YouTube, etc. And we just all would know what to pick and choose from this day of shooting or from an episode of something else that we shot.
Right.
And from there, it just happens.
Do you use anything that you've learned or anything that you learn currently in your day-to-day to help grow your own personal social media or any personal projects that you're working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I personally have not been good at keeping the ethos of posting a lot. It is something that I, like, once COVID hit, it just sort of threw me off a little bit. I stopped the cadence in which I was posting, and I haven't quite gotten back. Okay. I think for a while I was.
And what was regularly. That? You were just posting every day?
I was trying to, yeah, or at least once a week at the very least. I think like I also struggle to find something that I think is interesting. It's very easy to say what you think is the right thing to do, but also sometimes it's hard to do the thing. I've tried to honestly find more of what I enjoy posting and making. I think back then it was a little bit more limited to like my entire world was very much like I was surrounded by people who were really good at it, and I would try to kind of emulate that. But the content that I was posting wasn't necessarily what I think is my true self.
You didn't enjoy it?
No, I didn't really enjoy it. Like, sure, it got me some followers sometimes, but like I don't by any means have a big following. What I found I enjoyed posting more is shit about cars.
Really?
And granted, like back then I was living in the city. Like I didn't have something to work on. I didn't have something to fuck around with. Now that I can film myself working on stuff, I try to push myself to do that.
Right.
Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes it's like, I just want to get this goddamn coolant change done. I'm covered in this blue goo, and I just want to do this. But then a goal for me this year is to take a step back, take it slow, and just do it.
So what would be the goal of posting every day for you? Is it just, do you have aspirations to grow your personal brand? Or
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. I think like to make connections with people. Yeah. Getting big enough to get sponsored and some free stuff is wonderful.
Yeah. Get some
it's awesome.
Coilovers.
Yeah, it'd be great. But like to be able to make connections. Yeah. Like the way that we got connected, just DM'd you on Instagram because you guys were growing, you guys are big. Like I was like, these guys are really cool. They're also real people and they're also local. Like I would love to meet them. I'd love to hang.
I joke around. My wife's family lives in this small town in Italy, and we go every year and visit them. And it's like everybody always thinks, oh, the guy who goes to Europe every summer. We go and we stay in these like crappy little Airbnbs on this like rinky-dink beach.
Sure.
For us, it's luxury, but anybody else who goes, it's not like the Amalfi Coast or anything. But when I first started posting the content at the shop, they didn't understand it. They're like, why? And I would try with my broken Italian to explain what we were doing. And it got to the point where the running joke is per ristorante gratis, which is basically like my way of saying I'm doing it so that I can get invited to go to restaurants for free. Right? Like just because, and that's not what it is. I think the most important part of social media for me, because one thing I think that is abundantly clear is that there is a level of toxicity on social media that is rampant. It is like a wildfire. And if you get caught in it, it will spread to every aspect of your life and it can destroy you.
Great.
But if you're using it for what I truly believe was its intended purpose at its inception, which was to connect people, I think it is a wealth of information, knowledge, and a platform to do exactly that. I mean,
100%.
you can meet the coolest people. Like I don't think we probably wouldn't have met if it wasn't for our social media.
Totally.
And besides the fact that we get to do content together, I mean, I genuinely want you to come to Cars and Coffee because I like chatting with you.
Totally.
And like, I've met really cool people. I've made friends through social media, and I don't understand why, even if you're not a business, why you wouldn't be using social media to its full potential, because it is free.
100%.
And like you said, everybody has access to their phone, and your phone with CapCut or even with the internal editing of Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you can make amazing content.
110%.
It's free and it's fun. I have so much fun with it.
100%.
And you know, listen, does my wife break my balls a little bit when she's trying to have a dinner and I'm like checking my phone? Yeah. But you kind of just...
It's a fine line of... Yeah. It's a very fine
flows.
line there, yeah.
So where did your love for cars start?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I don't know. The story that I was told was like when I was really little, my babysitter had a Jetta.
Okay.
And I was sitting in a car seat in the back of my mom's car, and she listened to me pick out every Jetta as we were on the highway.
Nice.
And that combined with like growing up, my dad had must have been like an 86 Sentra or Stanza. It was a Nissan. And I would sit in the passenger seat and he would let me shift.
Cool.
So he would, operate the clutch, obviously,
Right.
and let me shift. And like, I think I just enjoyed that so much.
Did you ever have to replace a clutch?
Probably.
Because of you?
Probably.
It's fine.
Yeah. And then from there, I just like, I don't know. It always just sort of like was interesting to me. I used to play a game where like I would walk around the neighborhood. I like growing up in Queens, there's cars everywhere. You just walk around and just look at stuff. And like name the make and model an approximate year just by like without looking at the back of the car.
Wow.
It just became something like I would do in middle school.
Just became a small obsession for you.
Yeah.
Have you met people through your love of cars?
I met you guys.
That's true.
I met I think I introduced you guys to Jim Coy White.
Yes.
Met him
Cool guy.
randomly. I would say not a ton of people, not as many as I want to. I think specifically in New York City, it could be tough.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of people who
With cars.
with cars, and not a lot of people who share the same interest.
Right.
Finding them is difficult unless you know where to go. So like I used to, when my wife and I lived in Long Island City, every Sunday I would walk over to Greenpoint, and they used to do a Cars and Coffee at the Skyline Drive-In there. So I'd walk there and just start talking to people.
That's awesome.
Like, there's people who showed up with like crazy shit too, like in Brooklyn, which you don't expect.
Where are these coming from?
Yeah. So I'd say I want to meet more people.
Yeah. It's a great place to do it. Cars and Coffee.
Yeah.
March 24th is a
Shout
great
out.
place to do that. What was your first car?
First car was a 2000 Eclipse GT. So the V6.
That's a cool first car.
It looks cool. It was a hunk of shit.
Really?
It like I had it for about a year. I put a sub in it. I put nav in it, and then it just like the engine started to go. It was misfiring like crazy, and I was like, "This was a $3,000 car." I was like,
Not
"This."
gonna dump money into
Yeah,
it.
I just wanted to get something that was 2 doors and like looked cool. So a buddy of mine in college had an RSX Type S, and I loved the way the thing looked.
That's a sick car.
It's a blast to drive too. 6-speed,
Yep.
super crazy. It was like an 8K RPM.
Mm-hmm.
Red line or something.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, I want a cool car. I want it to look like this. So I had that. I had that Eclipse for like a year, sold it, and then I bought my first stick shift, which was an 07 Mazda 3.
Okay.
And I loved that.
That's
car.
another really fun car to drive.
Oh, it's a blast. I had it for like 5 years.
And what happened to that?
was, like, I sold it because then I bought a Focus ST.
That's interesting. We talk about this all the time. Lateral jumps.
Yeah.
In the car world, I think it's crucial.
Yeah.
To go laterally, not go from your, Ford to your McLaren. That's ridiculous.
Totally.
Because car ownership is a messy thing.
It can be.
And so I think that's a car that I've always wanted to own because it was a stick shift, you said.
The Mazda or the Focus?
The Focus.
Yeah, Focus ST.
That's a fun car, no?
That was a blast. Turbo is a 2-liter turbo. Is the not the RS,
Right.
but not the base Focus.
Right.
Yeah.
People love the RS. I think that car as a first car doesn't get enough love. They're out there.
Yeah.
They're not insanely reliable, but they're not insanely unreliable.
Yeah.
And you can pick them up for cheap, and it's such a great car. And my kid will 1,000% be starting off on a stick shift car.
Smart.
Not because I have some weird beef with automatic cars. I'm a Porsche PDK guy over a stick shift because that thing is insane.
It's a good feeling, yeah.
But because I have a terrible habit of driving and checking my phone, and you cannot do that when you have a stick shift car.
You definitely can't.
You ever been in a car accident before?
Once, yeah. It was in the Ford.
Okay.
It was the only car I've ever bought brand new. And I had switched to a job that required me to drive a lot, and I was in maybe Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn, trying to get out of a lane. It came and sideswiped me, and I looked at it, I was like, "Fuck!" It's like, this thing is never going to be the same again. And the damage wasn't that bad either.
Did they get out and acknowledge it? Was everybody okay?
Yeah, we all stopped, handed off insurance. Nobody was hurt. But I looked at the car and I was like, "Damn." I was like, I've had this less than a year. I was also frustrated at that point because I didn't love the job, and driving around the city every day
with a stick shift.
With stick shift was rough, and then it was winter, so you had the potholes. It was frustrating.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from customers. It's the same thing. One more understandable than the other for me. When cars get hit or when they get stolen, a lot of people are like, "Get this car out of my life because it'll never be the same." I'm here to tell you, people, all of you, it can be the same. And actually, my opinion, it can be better. Sure. Sometimes I find things. Most manufacturers are fantastic, but sometimes we find stuff from the factory that wasn't diagnosed or taken care of properly, and we can fix that here. But I completely understand. Yeah. I also have that feeling. If I get into an accident with a car, weirdly you fall out of love with it.
Yeah, I definitely loved that car. I think the driving around the city, I was not expecting that. I didn't expect that to become my job. I ended up buying a Wrangler after that because I was like, all right, this thing will stand up to potholes.
The best city car.
Yes. Oh, two-door, too.
I was just going to say, a two-door Wrangler is the best car. That is another, if I could find a stick shift, that's another car great for a kid to have.
100%.
They're safe if they don't flip them. Which you don't flip anymore. I mean, a modern, when I don't have kids yet, so you got at least 20 years to figure that out. But that's a great car.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And then in the
super
summer,
easy to park too.
Oh, the best.
Yeah.
In the summer, you take the doors off, you take the roof off.
Yeah.
You get chicks in that car, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Every girl wants to ride down with the top, all the
totally.
that's.
Oh man, that was a fun car. I loved that thing. It was tough to sell the fun sporty car for the truck that was getting 19 miles a gallon. But that thing was a blast.
So, I've kind of asked you this question in a few parts. I always like to ask people. First car, current car, forever car. So we know what your first car was.
Yeah.
We know what your current car is.
Yep.
What do you think would be your forever car? Do you have a grail car? Or another way to think about it is, did you have a poster car? Did you have something on your wall that you would look at that you said, one day I'm going to have that?
Aston Martin.
Really?
Yeah.
That is an unusual answer.
James Bond car.
Wow.
Huge James Bond fan. The first time I saw, what was it in? Maybe Die Another Day. I think it's a vintage. I
one of the old Vantages.
I love the way they look.
Amazing car.
Love the way they look.
James Bond I hold it near and dear to me, and I feel like that's one of those IPs that, it's okay to be a fan of, a badass dude who gets a lot of chicks and has
totally
money. And that's where people are cool with it.
Yes.
You know? In today's culture, it's
you
know what? James Bond is dope. I love everything about James Bond. I like his suits. I like his watches. I love the music. One of my all-time favorite movies. People ask, I need a recommendation. I tell them watch Skyfall because that's a brilliant movie.
For a long time, my favorite was Casino Royale, and Skyfall took that up another notch. I think it's one of the best.
The cars that he was driving.
Yeah.
That's where I fell in love with Javier Bardem because he's a psychopath in that movie.
So good.
And I watched Old Country for No Men, which is another amazing movie.
Nice.
So yeah, that's another thing people don't. I think they might underestimate is the ability for movies to sell cars.
Oh, totally. I'm sure.
It's massive. I mean, I haven't seen a good movie with a Tesla in it. I don't think people
very
really
true.
care too much about
That's
Teslas.
very true.
How do you feel about the electric stuff?
Oh, I dig it.
You do?
Oh, fully, 100%.
Even as somebody who has an old car, mechanical.
Oh, totally. I think there's a place for each car, right? Like right now, so I have the Porsche. My wife has a Mazda 3 that we got for free from her sister.
Nice.
Which was fantastic.
Hell yeah. Shout out to the sister. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. It's great. It's like a car that I can change oil on every year, and as long as it doesn't rust out, then we're good.
You're good.
And then my main daily driver it's an 06 Ridgeline.
Nice.
which I got from when my wife and I moved into our house. My father's friend unexpectedly passed away. They need to get rid of the truck. And I said, I will happily take this. It's been the best purchase as a new homeowner.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
To this day, my favorite feature on the truck bed is that the door goes this way, goes that way, and has the trunk underneath.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Spot on. This thing, like, the paint's all fading. But it runs fine. It's got 126,000 miles, and I'm gonna keep it until it rusts out.
Dude, it's a Honda. You could take it to change the engine. It'll probably be $2,000.
Totally, 100%.
It's so cheap to take care of.
Totally. But
Hondas
I think that there's a spot for each of these things, right? Like, I think maybe the Mazda is what we would replace with an electric car. I think like Tesla specifically, I think has revolutionized the industry. Everybody can say what they want about Elon Musk, like whatever. He can be an interesting person.
Yeah, right.
But it's very hard to argue that the Model S is what gave every other manufacturer a kick in the ass to actually get serious about electric.
1,000%.
Yeah, I think like without that, we would still be seeing the old Leaf over and over.
100%. And there's this quote that is completely overplayed, but it is one of the most important things. Is comparison is the thief of joy. And I don't understand why people can't understand. I don't understand why people can't understand that you can appreciate the fact that the fastest Porsche that they've ever made is a Taycan.
Oh, yeah.
But also one of the most fun driving experiences you could ever have is a 2006 Porsche Boxster.
Sure.
Like, those two things exist in tandem, and one doesn't take away from the other.
100%.
You know, listen, I am a proponent of smiles per mile. So I have a Tesla, I have a Model Y that I have done a lot of stuff to make it really fun.
That's right.
I've lifted it. I've put crazy wheels on it. You've seen it before.
Yep.
I have fun in that car. The one argument that I see that makes a lot of sense is driving a car like with a big engine loud is kind of like cutting down a tree with a chainsaw.
Sure.
And driving a Tesla is kind of like cutting skin with a scalpel. They both do a job. They both do them differently. The one argument is the Tesla or any electric car feels soulless. And I think that might be true to an aspect, but I think that is a little bit user error because I think that people are equating it to that. I think they're so afraid of electric cars coming in and taking out their fun that they're having in combustion engine cars. But I think there's room for both. I don't know.
I completely agree. I mean, I would have no problem. I drove a friend's Model Y a couple weeks ago, and I was blown away by it.
You liked it?
I think like I do. I don't think I've really had it. I've heard it referred to in the sense of like they're kind of like soulless. But that said, I think other manufacturers probably don't have that problem. Right. I don't think the Taycan is good. I've never driven one, but like I can't imagine that being a soulless drive.
No, it's not. Roller coaster on tap is the way that it's been explained to me, and I think that's a really perfect way. I mean, it's like where your nuts go into your stomach. You're like, fuck.
Yeah. Or like the Plaid. Like,
oh, dude.
When I've never driven one. I haven't been in one, but like experiencing that kind of acceleration that makes you nauseous, that can't be soulless. That's got to make you feel something.
100%.
But like it's the same. Like before electric cars, you had the Civic and the Corolla, which very easily could be argued as soulless. But they did a job and did it really well. They were reliable. They were
people
really
also
good on
made
gas.
them. There's huge communities around those two cars. People you can probably find more cool aftermarket shit for those two cars than any other car on the market.
100%.
And I mean, listen, you'll be driving down the road in Stamford, where I'm from, and you'll see a Ferrari that's coming from Greenwich or a Nissan or a Honda that's been tuned from Bridgeport, and they equally get me giddy. So I think it's new. I'm sure when like whoever the hell was driving a horse and buggy was like saw a car and said this shit is whack, and then after a while you got to give things time and space to breathe.
100%.
And I think we just need to be a little bit more supportive. And maybe it's just because I have a Tesla and I might want to sell it in the near future and I want somebody to come and buy it from me. But at the same token,
that's fair. I mean, honestly, like I think of it in terms of like missions. Like the number one, this would be like they call it this when you're flying. They're like, what's your, if you're going to buy a plane, they're like, what's your average mission? Like, are you going to buy something that's a tiny little 2-seater? Are you going to buy something that's a 4-seater, a 6-seater, like whatever. For 99% of the things, of the missions that I have, the things that I do, of the places I'm driving, 300 miles on a battery sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I can get to my wife's sister lives out in Pennsylvania.
Right.
I can easily get there and back on a single charge or get some free electricity at their house.
Yeah.
And that costs me way less than, than the maintenance upkeep and
$60 full tank gas. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't people I feel like they fabricate these things. Like I have that argument all the time. What about the battery? I'm like, Ma, you go to CVS, the grocery store, and back home. Like, you're good.
Right.
300 miles.
Right.
You're good. And the network is growing. But you've talked about planes a few times. What's your passion for planes?
So I got my pilot's license over COVID.
Sweet.
That was my COVID hobby.
Okay.
I didn't love getting on planes at first. I think to preface, my mom's side of the family is very much into aviation. My grandfather was a pilot in World War II, came back, and then spent every waking moment at the airport out on Long Island.
He did.
He spent every second he possibly could.
You'd think he'd want to go away from it.
No, he loved it. That was that's what he did. He became an FAA examiner. He owned a couple planes here and there. He had a P-51 Mustang, which was like an old warbird, which now are very hard to find.
Yeah, I know about those. I think Tom Cruise might have one.
Tom Cruise has one. Yeah. They're crazy. V12.
It's a beautiful
Merlin Rolls-Royce engine. Yeah,
they're
sick.
Nuts.
So I remember he passed when I was pretty young, but I do remember like him taking me to the airport a couple times and like sitting in the plane and being like, oh, this is fun. I never got the chance to go up with him, but come around 2020, I didn't love getting on commercial flights. Made me anxious. I definitely had some flight anxiety.
Did you always have that fear? I'm sorry to interrupt.
I got that in high school.
I've heard that. The reason I ask is I've heard that people developing that fear over time.
Yeah.
Like it randomly kicking in.
I don't know why. Yeah. I don't have a reason for it.
Yeah.
Like I never had a particularly traumatic flight, but like my friend got his license in 2019. I went up with him once
That's gotta be scary.
Late to mid 2020. Scared the shit out of me. It was the smallest plane I've ever been into. It was a Cessna 152, which is a 2-seater, which like at 6 foot tall, I don't really fit in. I'm sitting there, I'm like,
right. You think 2-seater like maybe a car like this you're talking about.
It's tiny. This thing's small.
You're up against
it's turbulent. For like bopping around like near Farmingdale, landed, and I was like, that actually kind of was fun. Like we landed, I was like, all right, that scared the living daylights out of me, but like that was kind of cool. We just went flying, like we were in the air by ourselves.
Right.
Fast forward to my birthday in October, and him and my wife and a couple of our friends pulled together to get me what's called the Discovery flight, which is like the first flight you do.
Oh, that's dope.
You go up with an instructor. It's kind of like a discovery because you get to discover whether or not you actually want to
discover the air.
Yeah, whether or not you actually want to learn how to do this thing. So went up with an instructor. Still kind of scared me. It's a bigger plane this time. But I landed and I was like, fuck it. Let me give it a shot. So let me take a couple lessons. If I still don't like it, then I'll quit.
Okay.
9 months later, I ended up with my license.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge turnaround. From being like terrified to flying your own plane.
It's the best thing I've ever done. I never thought it would be something that I ever would pursue. But now I'm really, really happy that I have.
Had you ever dove into passions like that before? Like that seriously?
It had been a while, I would say. What was really exciting about it too is like at the time I'm 33 now. I was 30 then, 31 then.
Getting old, bro.
I know. It's
No, I'm kidding.
I can't remember the last time besides that I've like learned something new and had to study. And that actually felt really good.
It's huge.
Like I just hadn't used my brain in a way that like I'm sitting there with a textbook, taking practice tests of stuff and like, preparing for an exam, preparing for an oral exam. Like the last time was maybe college, but like college was kind of a breeze. So I probably high school more seriously. Like it felt good to learn. And it's luckily a hobby where like you kind of have to be constantly learning. Like if I wanted to, and I will eventually, the next step over past private pilot is instrument rated.
Okay.
Which means you can fly with instruments.
Shitty conditions, right?
Yep. Which like right now I can't fly in clouds. Not allowed to. I'd probably die. Like Jesus. You spend another 40 hours with an instructor learning how to ignore the signals of your body when you can't see outside because spatial disorientation happens very, very quickly. So you can be looking outside and think that your wing's level, but if you're in a cloud, you really have no fucking idea without looking at the gauge in front of you, at the attitude.
And they let normal people do this? Like anybody can do it?
With a lot of training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
God bless you, man. That's scary.
But it's become a hobby that I really love doing. Like I try to go as often as I can. It is not cheap. I will preface that it's not a cheap hobby, but it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, I could talk to you for hours about a million things, but we're getting towards that time. So I want to give you an opportunity to plug and promote who you are, tell people where they can find you. What are your social medias?
Cool. At Seth Feingersh everywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah, everywhere. I think so. Yeah.
And can people meet you at Cars and Coffee on March 24th?
I
Hopefully.
hopefully. If
Okay.
I don't have to go to my nephew's birthday, then I will if I'm in the state of New York, I will 100% be there.
I love it. And we're going to see your Porsche.
Hell yeah.
So the last thing we're going to do, which is a new addition to this show, if you're a fan of Grand Tourer or Top Gear, you know that they have a test track and everybody who comes on has to do a lap.
Totally.
So I'm going to give you a test lap on Mario Kart.
Love it.
And we're going to see what your fastest lap is. I currently still am champion and have the fastest time, but we're going to give you a moment.
Respect.
So thank you so much for tuning into the J&B Body Talks, J&B Body Works podcast. Who is Mikey is. This has been a fantastic episode. You can find us all over different social medias at JB Bodywork. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. This podcast will be available on pretty much every platform where you can get podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. Yeah. And we're working on getting on Apple Podcasts right now because I know a lot of people are like, I don't have the subscription. So it's on YouTube there for you, the full video. We're also going to be cutting stuff up. We're going to see this guy play some Mario Kart in a minute. So that's going to be exciting. But thank you so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thanks for joining us.
Took me a second to get the.
You're good. You got the controls. You're good.
Just missed the
Just missed the boost. Well, you got the guy behind you or now in front of you showing you where you got to go.
I'll try to save that mushroom for
Very well done.
a rainy
The boy
day.
knows how to drift. You're the first contestant who knows how to drift.
I played a lot of Mario Kart.
There you go. Mario Kart or Beerio Kart? Or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both.
Yeah. Where'd you go to college?
SUNY Purchase.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you in a frat?
There was no frats there. It
Oh,
was an
really?
art school.
Art school?
Yeah, SUNY Purchase.
Okay.
Right here in
Yes,
Purchase.
yeah.
It's very much like
In artsy school, yeah.
artsy school.
Yeah, a lot of professional sports teams play there, like train there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I think the Red Bulls were training there for a little
I
bit.
think so. Yeah, they got some nice fields. It's like close enough to the city.
So if you could make your Porsche, your dream Porsche, what would you like to do to it?
Honestly, I want to bring it back to as close to original state as possible. I think
Okay.
I was fortunate to find one that's in decent shape. The 16 valves aren't super upgradable from what I hear.
Right.
So I just want to get it as close to original as possible.
They're definitely more rare too.
They are.
I
Yeah.
don't see those as often. I have to say I'm getting a little nervous because he's doing really, really well right now.
Is that your ghost up front?
It might have been your ghost. No, it couldn't have been your ghost. It's
Couldn't have been,
probably mine, yeah. Shit. I can't have a slower time than anybody. Who do you usually play as when you play?
Oh, Yoshi. Oh, shit, I missed that boost. Come on.
Very well done.
What was your time?
Let's see. It'll show up.
Oh, man.
So my fastest ever is 34, and your fastest was 34.3. You're 34.8.
Oh.
You were very close.
Oh, man.
The next time you come on, you got to go for it.
Oh, I got it. That was fun.
That was
I enjoyed that. That was fun.
Yeah, you got to.